While Ned Stark held his dying sister in his arms, promising to protect her son, there was one thing even he never knew. Lyanna didn't just give birth to a child. She gave birth to two. Twin boys, both with silver strands hidden in their soft, dark hair, both carrying the blood of ice and fire. But war doesn't wait for babies. When Howland Reed entered the tower moments after Ned, he found a silent woman standing in the shadows, an old midwife from Dorne, terrified and shaking. She whispered something into his ear that made his face go pale. One of the babies, the second boy, had been taken, smuggled out during the chaos. A man cloaked in black had come in the night, claiming the child would never survive if raised with the other. Ned never saw the second child, never knew. Lyanna only had time to beg him to protect Jon, the one in her arms. Her last breath was a name, Aegon. But which child was that name for? The one Ned carried back to Winterfell? Or the one who vanished into silence? That second baby would grow up far from thrones, far from dragons, far from even knowing who he was. Raised not in Winterfell, not in Dorne, but across the narrow sea, among strangers. A Targaryen in name and blood, but nothing else. His name became Ryan. That's what they called him in the streets of Lys, one of the free cities. He had silver hair like his father, violet eyes that glowed in the dark like dying embers, and a fire inside him that he couldn't explain. He was faster than the other boys, quieter, sharper. There were nights when he dreamed of snow-covered wolves and flaming swords, of a wall of ice taller than mountains, of a shadow named Jon. He never understood it, until one day a sellsword found him. Not just any sellsword, but one who had once served under Sir Arthur Dayne. The man recognized the boy's features. "You've got the face of a Targaryen," he told him. And a stark stare. He said it like a curse, like a warning. From that day on, Ryan began to dig. In the back alleys and merchant docks of the free cities, he paid gold for secrets, asked questions no one wanted to answer. He heard of Lyanna Stark, of the rebellion, of Rhaegar and his hidden son, but never of a second child. Not once. He wasn't in the songs. He wasn't in the scrolls. Even the Mesters didn't mention him. He didn't exist, but he was real. He could feel it. Meanwhile, back in Westeros, Jon Snow fought battles he never imagined. The Wall, the White Walkers, the betrayal of his own men, the rise and fall of Daenerys. Every step, he walked deeper into a destiny that was never truly his alone. And always, he felt like something was missing. They were two halves of the same flame, separated at birth by fear, lies, and prophecy. And in all those years, they never met. Not once, even when Jon came to Dragonstone. Even when he sailed past the very coasts where Ryan once walked, the sea between them stayed quiet. Destiny teased them. Fate kept them apart, because the world wasn't ready for both. One was enough to shake the kingdoms. Two would have burned them all. Ryan had always known he didn't belong. In the narrow alleys of Lys, where sellswords drank and smugglers traded secrets like silver, he stood out. He touched the page and felt something stir inside him. That night, he dreamed of fire again. Not just flames, but a woman screaming. A sword soaked in blood. A whisper. Not him. The other one. He woke with his hands shaking. That's when he started asking the right questions. It took years, and more gold than he could afford, but slowly the pieces began to come together. There were whispers of a child born at the Tower of Joy, hidden, protected, a boy raised in the north by Eddard Stark. That boy was Jon Snow, but there was no mention of a second. Ryan started to believe maybe the dreams were just that, dreams. Maybe he wasn't who he thought. Maybe he wasn't anyone. Until the man came to him. He wore a simple cloak. His accent was Westerosi, though his face had the tan of someone who had traveled far and often. He introduced himself as Sir Thorin. No last name, no sigil. He said he used to serve House Dane long ago, and he had something to show. A blade, not a sword of great legend, but a short dagger, Valyrian steel. On the handle, carved deep into the bone, a pair of dragon wings wrapped around a direwolf. Ryan froze. He had seen that symbol in a dream before, once, years ago. Thorin saw the look on his face and nodded. "I've been searching for you," he said, "for a long time." Ryan didn't understand. "Why me?" "Because you're not supposed to be here," Thorin replied. "You are supposed to die. Or rule." The words didn't make sense at first, but slowly, painfully, the truth began to bloom. Sir Thorin wasn't just any Sellsword. He had been at the Tower of Joy, hidden from view, injured during the battle outside. He had seen 2 babies. Not one, but after the chaos, he was told to disappear. Too many knew too much already. The King's Lair had killed the Mad King. Robert was on the throne. Anything Targaryen had to be erased, including Ryan. "But I wasn't erased," Ryan whispered. "I'm still here." And now the realm stood on the edge of chaos again. The Dragon Queen had fallen. The North had broken away. Jon Snow had vanished into the snow beyond the wall. And still, they hadn't met. But that was about to change. Because Ryan had decided he would cross the narrow sea. He would find the ghost of the brother who never knew him. And the world would finally see the face of the forgotten Targaryen. The ship rocked gently as it cut through the dark waters of the narrow sea. Ryan stood near the railing, eyes fixed on the distant horizon. Westeros, a land he had only ever heard about in stories, in scattered whispers over mugs of ale or faded pages of books. It was a place where dragons once ruled and wolves howled in the snow. The land of his blood, yet not his home. Not yet. The journey was quiet. The crew didn't speak to him much, and he didn't try to speak to them. He spent most of his time alone, thinking about what he'd do when he reached the shore. About Jon. It was strange, the idea of a brother, someone who looked like him, who shared his father's fire, his mother's sorrow. Did Jon dream the same dreams? Did he feel the same ache in his chest, that constant feeling of being incomplete? If they had grown up together, would they have been allies? Or rivals? "Storm's coming," the captain said one night, nodding toward the clouds building in the west. But Ryan barely heard him. His mind was elsewhere. He was remembering a dream he had had days earlier, standing in a snowy forest, face to face with a man whose eyes looked just like his own. They didn't speak in the dream, but the silence between them said more than words ever could. When the ship finally docked near Blackwater Bay, Ryan wore a hood low over his face. He didn't want attention. Not yet. King's Landing was still rebuilding. The ruins of Dragonfire and Rebellion were everywhere. Ashes still clung to broken stones, and people moved like ghosts among the wreckage. There were no banners left. No Targaryen flags. No Stark wolves. Just quiet. He didn't stay long. He had no interest in thrones or politics. He asked questions, subtly, about Jon Snow. Some said he'd gone north. Others said he was dead. One old merchant swore he'd seen him leave on a black horse with no destination, disappearing into the wilderness. That was all Ryan needed to hear. He traveled north. The road was long and bitter cold. But Ryan didn't feel it. Something was guiding him now. Not just the hope of a meeting. It was deeper than that. A pull in his chest, like gravity, like fate. He passed through towns where Jon's name still sparked conversations, not as a Targaryen, but as the man who had killed Daenerys Stormborn. Some called him a traitor. Others called him a hero. Ryan didn't care about either version. All he cared about was the truth. And the truth had no sides. When he reached the gates of Winterfell, he didn't reveal his identity. He posed as a traveler from Essos, looking for trade work. The castle was quiet, more guarded than he expected. Queen Sansa ruled now, and she trusted no one. Ryan wasn't allowed inside the walls. Not yet. He waited in the nearby village for days, listening, and one night he heard the news. Jon Snow had been seen beyond the wall, south of the haunted forest, leading a small band of free folk, but mostly alone. Rumor had it he'd chosen exile, a self-made punishment. He had given up his name, his claim, his right to anything. And still, the world couldn't forget him. Ryan felt something shift again. It wasn't just about finding his brother anymore. It was about finding what was left of both of them. He joined a caravan heading north toward the wall. On the way, he saw the scars left by the long night. Villages burned, families gone, whole forests dead. He saw the cost of the wars that Jon had survived. And with every step, he wondered more and more. Would Jon even want to meet him? Would he welcome a brother who never fought at his side, who grew up far from the chaos, untouched by the blood and frost? Or would he see Ryan as just another ghost from a past he wanted to forget? Ryan didn't have the answer. But he knew this. He couldn't turn back now. He would cross the wall. He would find Jon Snow. And no matter what happened, the truth would be spoken, between brothers, between flames, and in the cold winds of the north. The wall rose before him like a silent giant. Cold, eternal, unforgiving. Ryan stood still for a moment at the base of it, staring up at the ancient ice. It looked more like a piece of the sky had fallen and frozen in place. He'd heard of it in stories, but nothing could prepare him for the feeling, like standing before a sleeping beast that remembered every war ever fought. A black-cloaked guard at the gate narrowed his eyes. "You lost, Isosi?" "I'm looking for someone," Ryan replied calmly, pulling his cloak tighter around his shoulders. "A man named Jon Snow," the guard scoffed. "You and half the realm." "Go home. I'm not here for politics," Ryan said. "He's my brother." That made the guard pause, but only for a second. He looked Ryan up and down, taking in the silver hair, the sharp jaw, the strange eyes. There was something oddly familiar about the stranger, but Westeros had seen too many strange faces in recent years. And people lied, especially about blood. "Try your luck north of the wall," the guard said finally, motioning toward the gate. "But don't expect to come back." "I won't," Ryan muttered as he passed through the ancient tunnel. The wind hit harder on the other side. Wilder, colder. The land felt alive, but not in a welcoming way. It pulsed with memory. Ghosts of battles fought and kings who rose and fell. Ryan pushed forward, guided only by rumors, instinct, and a strange tug in his chest that had never gone away. He found signs of Jon's passing, tracks in the snow, stories from quiet wildlings who spoke of a man who looked like a Stark, but carried the silence of a broken king. They said he had a wolf bigger than any horse. Ghost, they called it. And he kept to the shadows, never staying long. One woman, old and blind, spoke to Ryan by her fire. He walks like someone with too many names, she said, poking the flames with a stick. One name for love, one for beauty, one he's trying to forget. Where is he now? Ryan asked. Far, she replied, but not gone. He's waiting. Not for you, not yet, but for something. Maybe he doesn't even know what. Ryan stayed with the wildlings that night, but his sleep was restless. He dreamed again, not of fire this time, but snow, endless snow, and a figure walking alone across it, dragging a sword behind him. When the figure turned, it had Jon's face, but his eyes were hollow. In the morning, Ryan left before sunrise. Days passed. He climbed ridges, crossed frozen rivers, and followed faint trails through the snow. The cold bit into him, but he kept going. He had no army, no banners, just the truth. And then finally he saw him. At the edge of a frozen lake, near a cluster of black pines, a man stood alone, cloaked in furs. His back was turned. A white direwolf rested beside him, ears up, eyes sharp as winter. The wolf saw Ryan first, stood slowly, muscles tense. The man turned. Their eyes met. It was like looking into a mirror, warped by time. Same shape of the jaw, same dark brows. But where Ryan had fire in his gaze, Jon's held the weight of loss, years of war, of death, of duty that never let go. Jon didn't speak. Neither did Ryan. They just looked at each other, both unsure if the moment was real or another dream. Finally, Jon broke the silence. His voice was low, worn. "Who are you?" Ryan stepped forward, slowly. "I don't know what they called me in Westeros. I only know what I was told, that I was taken from the Tower of Joy the night you were born." Jon's face didn't move, but his eyes shifted, a flicker of recognition, of disbelief. Ryan kept going. "I think we're brothers, twins." The wind howled through the trees, and for a moment neither man said a word. Then Jon whispered, barely above the wind, "That's not possible." Ryan nodded. "Maybe, but I'm standing here. Same blood, same story. Just untold." Ghost growled softly, pacing between them. Jon raised a hand, combing him, though his eyes never left Ryan. "Why now?" Jon asked. "Because I needed to know who I am," Ryan replied. "And I think so do you." Jon didn't answer right away. He just stared, not in anger, not in shock, but in silence, the kind that came from someone who had already seen too much. The cold wind rustled through the trees around them, but neither man moved. Ryan stood there like a question, and Jon looked like he wasn't ready for any more answers. Eventually, Jon turned away, gazing out over the frozen lake again. "You shouldn't have come?" Ryan stepped closer. "Why not?" "Because it doesn't change anything." Ryan looked at the snow beneath his boots, then back at Jon. "It changes everything. For me." Jon exhaled through his nose, like a man carrying the weight of ghosts. "I buried a queen. I gave up the throne. I exiled myself beyond the wall, because I thought it would end with me. No more lies, no more bloodlines. And now here you are, dragging it all back." "I'm not here to claim anything," Ryan said softly. "I don't want thrones or crowns or songs. I just wanted to find my brother." Jon glanced at him. There was no anger in his eyes, only a tired confusion. "You sure we're brothers?" "Blood doesn't always mean bond." Ryan nodded once. "I'm sure. I've carried this weight my whole life. Visions, dreams, a name that didn't belong to me. A face I kept seeing in my mind, yours. I didn't even know your name until a year ago, and when I did, something inside me just knew. John gave a bitter chuckle, the kind that didn't carry joy. You're not the only one who found out who I really was too late. They sat down by a half-buried log. Ghost stayed close, watching Ryan like a hawk. Ryan respected the wolf's loyalty. That, at least, John hadn't lost. John finally spoke again. When I was a boy, I used to stare at the Stark children and wonder what was wrong with me. Why I didn't fit. Ned Stark was a good man, but he never told me the truth. Not until long after he died, and even then, it was a friend of his son who showed me. Brandon, now king. And when you found out you were a Targaryen? Ryan asked carefully. John's jaw tightened. I hated it, still do. The name came with too much fire, too much death. And Daenerys. She believed it meant destiny, that she had to burn the world to rebuild it. Ryan listened in silence. It was clear John wasn't just talking to him. He was letting things out that had been buried too long. I thought dying would bring peace, John said. I've died before. You know that? Ryan's eyes widened slightly. No, John nodded. Stabbed in the heart by my own men. They called it betrayal. I came back, but I wasn't the same. Since then, I've just been walking through shadows, doing what I had to, but never really alive. And now? Ryan asked. John looked up at the gray sky. Now I chop wood, hunt, keep the peace between clans who barely tolerate each other. I'm no king. I'm no Targaryen. I'm just a man trying to stay warm. Ryan smiled faintly. Sounds peaceful. Lonely, John corrected. That word sat heavy between them. Ryan looked at him seriously. What if we tried to figure it out? Together? Not as heirs, not as warriors. Just as brothers. John didn't reply immediately. His hand rested on Ghost's fur. You sure you want to stay in this place? Ryan nodded. I've never had a home that felt real. Maybe this could be one. John studied him for a long time. Finally, he said, there's an old cabin 2 miles east. No roof, but good bones. We'll fix it up. You can stay there. Ryan gave a small, grateful nod. Thank you. John stood, brushing snow off his cloak. But I'm warning you. Up here, there's nothing but cold, quiet, and your own thoughts. I've lived my whole life with those, Ryan said. I think I'll manage. As they walked away from the frozen lake, side by side for the first time, something subtle shifted in the cold northern air. Not a storm, not a prophecy. Just the beginning of something neither of them ever thought they'd find. Family. The cabin was nothing special. Just 4 walls, some half-rotted beams, and a roof that sagged like it had given up years ago. But to Ryan, it felt like a start. John wasn't much of a talker. He handed Ryan an axe, nodded toward the trees, and that was their first morning together. No grand speeches, no emotional reunions, just work. Honest, heavy, cold work. Ryan didn't mind. Swinging the axe, hauling logs, patching the roof, it kept his hands busy while his mind slowly settled. They barely spoke during the day, but at night, when the fire cracked and Ghost crawled near the door like a silent guardian, John would say a few words. Sometimes just a memory, a story. Nothing dramatic, just small pieces of the man he used to be. I used to think being a bastard meant I had to prove myself every day, John said one night, staring into the fire. Turns out even knowing the truth didn't change that feeling. Ryan nodded. I never even got a name that felt mine. In Lace, people called me Silver Eyes, or the Ghost Boy. I didn't belong anywhere. John took a breath. Maybe that's why we're both here. They didn't talk about the Targaryen name much. Neither of them liked how heavy it felt. Ryan had questions, of course, about Daenerys, about the war, about the prophecy people once whispered across oceans. But Jon never wanted to dwell on it. The more people talk about destiny, Jon muttered once, the more people die. So they focused on the present, on surviving. They hunted together, repaired the walls of the cabin, built new shelves, even carved out a small trench to guide melted snow away from the doorway. It wasn't a kingdom, but it was theirs. And slowly, the silence between them changed. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was peace, but peace in the north never lasted long. One morning, while skinning a deer outside the cabin, Ryan noticed tracks in the snow. Not animal, human. 3 sets. He knelt, brushing his fingers along the prints. Fresh, too fresh. Company, he said when Jon stepped outside. Jon didn't ask how he knew. He just grabbed his sword. They waited. Hours passed. The forest was still, but Ryan felt something shift in the air. Not fear exactly, but something close. Like being watched. When the visitors arrived, they didn't hide. 3 wildlings, tall, wrapped in thick furs. One of them carried a horn. Another had war paint smeared across his face. "We're not here to fight," the tallest one said, though his hand rested near the axe at his side. Jon stepped forward. "Then what do you want?" "We heard rumors," the painted man said, eyeing Ryan carefully. "That the man who killed the Dragon Queen wasn't alone anymore. That he has a brother." Ryan's heartbeat slowed. So the whispers had started already. "We don't want trouble," Jon said flatly. "We live quiet. You should keep walking." The men exchanged glances. Then the one with the horn spoke. "You know how it works, Snow. Names like yours, or his, they echo. Doesn't matter how far you run." The group turned and left after that, without another word. But their presence had left something behind, a reminder. The world hadn't forgotten either of them. And it would come knocking again. Later that night, Ryan stood outside, watching the stars appear. Jon joined him, arms crossed against the cold. "They'll come back," Jon said quietly. "I know. They'll want answers. Loyalty. Maybe even war." Ryan turned to him. "What will we give them?" Jon's face was unreadable. "Depends on what they bring." Silence settled again. This one felt heavier. Ryan broke it. "Do you ever think maybe we were meant to meet long ago? Before everything went wrong?" Jon didn't look at him. Just kept his eyes on the horizon. "Maybe. Or maybe the world couldn't handle both of us back then." Ryan smiled faintly. "Think it can now?" Jon finally looked at him, and for the first time since they met, his expression softened. Not with joy, but with something steadier. Trust. We're about to find out. Ryan spotted it first, sitting on the wooden post outside the cabin, a scroll tied to its leg. It wore no banner, no royal seal, just a black ribbon, northern style. Jon untied it slowly, reading the message while Ryan watched. His face didn't change as he read, but when he was done, he handed the parchment over without a word. Ryan read it. "To the one once called Jon Snow, word has reached Winterfell. A brother returned. A Targaryen bloodline, unburied. Come, speak, or the North will decide without you." No name was signed, but it didn't need one. "Sansa," Jon muttered, confirming what Ryan had already guessed. "She always did like to get to the point." Ryan folded the paper. "She knows about me?" "She knows someone's here. That's enough. And what now?" John stared off into the woods for a long time. Then finally, "We go." They left the next morning. Not with fanfare, not with armor or banners. Just two cloaked figures riding through the snow. Ghost ran ahead, his white shape vanishing and reappearing like a spirit in the frost. The road to Winterfell was familiar to John, foreign to Ryan. He saw the frozen rivers, the quiet villages tucked into hills, the faces of northerners who looked at them with suspicion, even fear. John got nods of recognition. Ryan got stares. They arrived at Winterfell by dusk. The great castle stood tall, strong, and cold as ever, but it felt different now, more watchful. The gates opened slowly. No trumpets, just cold steel and sharp eyes. Sansa met them in the courtyard. She wore a dark cloak lined with fur, her hair braided tight, her expression unreadable. "John," she said with a small nod. "You've been gone a long time." John nodded back. "And yet you still managed without me." Her gaze turned to Ryan. She studied him closely, eyes narrowing slightly. "And this is the reason the North is whispering again?" Ryan stepped forward. "My name is Ryan. I know what you are," Sansa said calmly. "Or at least what people say you are. I'm not here to stir anything," he said. "That's not for you to decide," she said softly, not unkindly. "Come, you'll rest tonight. Tomorrow we talk." That night, they stayed in the guest quarters of Winterfell. The stone walls felt heavier than the snow-covered forest. The castle carried memories, not all of them kind. Ryan walked the halls alone for a while. He passed tapestries of wolves and stars. Heard servants whisper his name when they thought he couldn't hear. A ghost walking through the halls of legends. In a quiet corner, he found the crypts. He went down alone. The air grew colder the deeper he went. Statues of long-dead Starks watched him from the shadows. But one alcove drew him in. A candle flickered near her name, Lyanna Stark. He knelt. Not because he was told to, not because she was royalty, but because she was the reason he existed. "I don't know what you wanted for us," he whispered. "Me and John, but I hope this isn't too far from it." A soft wind blew through the chamber, though there were no windows. It almost felt like an answer. Lords of mountain clans, warden all eyes, northern voices that had survived too many wars to trust anything easily. Sansa stood at the head of the table. She didn't smile. "You've all heard the whispers. You've seen the letters. Today, we speak plainly." She motioned to Ryan. "This is the man they speak of. A Targaryen, a brother to Jon Snow." The room murmured. Eyes turned sharp. "By blood," Ryan added, his voice clear. "But not by name. I didn't come here to claim the North. I've lived without titles my entire life. I'm not asking for one now." A grizzled lord from Deepwood Rays leaned forward. "If you carry the dragon's blood, why show your face here of all places?" "Because I found my brother," Ryan replied. "And this is his home. I wanted to understand who I am and who he became." "And what of the Targaryens?" Another voice asked. What of dragons and kings and fire? That name nearly burned this world to ash. Ryan didn't flinch. I carry the name. Not the madness. Jon stepped beside him now, his voice low but firm. He came here without an army, without a single sword. If that's not proof of peace, I don't know what is. Peace is easy to speak when your bloodline once ruled over us, came a sharper voice. Jon's eyes met theirs. He's not here to rule. Neither am I. That's over. The North has its queen. Sansa's eyes flickered for a moment, not surprise, just something like quiet respect. Ryan looked around the room. I won't stay if you don't want me here. I've lived as a ghost. I can do it again. But I would rather be among the living. I'd rather find something real. Jon looked at the snow. They don't trust easy, but they're loyal once they do. Ryan leaned back against the stone wall. Do you trust me? Jon didn't answer right away. Then finally, I'm learning to. They sat like that for a long time. No need for big speeches. Just two men who had once been strangers, now brothers trying to understand each other. The quiet between them wasn't cold anymore. It was comfort. Days turned to weeks. Winter held strong, but the North began to feel less like exile and more like a place Ryan could belong. He helped with repairs, hunted with the guards, even taught a few boys from the village how to defend themselves. People stared less, spoke more. He wasn't one of them, not yet, but he was no longer a ghost. One morning, Jon handed him a sword. Ryan raised an eyebrow. What's this for? For the wall, Jon said. There's talk of unrest. A new tribe pushing through the Frostfangs. I'm riding north. Ryan studied the sword. And you want me to come? Jon's face was unreadable. Only if you want to. Ryan held the blade in his hands, then looked up. I followed a dream across the sea just to find out who I was. But I think I've finally figured it out. Jon waited. I'm not a prince, not a king, not some secret heir, Ryan said. I'm just your brother, and I think that's enough. Jon gave a small nod, the kind only he could give that meant everything. They rode north together 2 days later, past the wall, into snow and silence once again. But this time, they weren't alone. They weren't broken pieces. They were brothers, found at last.